Hey, everybody. Good evening. It's Dr. Lisa. It's a little bit after 5. We are going to go ahead and get started. I hope you all have had a fantastic day. I've been busy today, so I have not had time to make myself look presentable to go live on Facebook or anything like that. So we are just on Podbean today. However, I have some videos that I do need to upload to social media, so I'm going to be doing that today. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Today, we're going to finish our series on the question or about the question, am I raising a serial killer? And we are talking to the fathers, which is right on time, right? Because Father's Day is coming up. So I hope you guys are going to celebrate Father's Day. Gentlemen, we don't talk about you all enough. I've been talking about fathers and men and mental health a lot more on my blog. So today, we're going to take a different direction and we're going to talk about aggressive behavior in children. However, we are going to do it from the perspective of the negative impact that you all can have that in children that creates these more aggressive behaviors. So keep these questions coming. These kind of questions keep me going, and I appreciate them. So ask and ask away. You can reach me at my email address, kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com, and at 765-205-1959. I don't mind. Some people will text me their questions, and that is absolutely acceptable to me. And I will reach out back to you and post your questions on my blog. So thank you. So I want to talk to you all really quickly about something that I've been observing lately. I'm not sure why this is happening. I have not examined the connection. I don't know if we all have gotten so comfortable since COVID being at home or what's happening, but listen, I want to talk to you guys about being appropriate when you have telehealth. So I hear from a lot of other professionals things like this. I can't believe I saw boobs today in my client. Oh my God, my client was in a negligee, lingerie, talking to me on the video chat. And for myself, I have seen so many breasts in the past 7 months that I can count that I really don't want to see, right? So when you do receive help via telehealth, remember we don't want to see that. This is just kind of like a PSA. This is our job. You are still coming to, psychologists or medical doctors or whomever you're going to see in a professional setting, although it is telehealth. And I know you guys are comfortable at home, but it's just really inappropriate for us to see your private parts. And we don't want to. We don't want to. So this is just again a PSA, just letting you all know that yes, we notice, but it would be better if you all just cover up, please. Another thing I wanted to share is something that I actually put on Facebook. I do not think we talk enough about little baby boys that have their tongues tied. Yeah. I think we need to talk more about that to parents. When I do talk to parents and I make the suggestion of your child, in particular boys, your child has a speech impairment. Did you ask your pediatrician or an ENT if his tongue is tied? And every last parent will tell me no for the most part. It rarely do I get hear from parents that have had their kids' tongues tied, primarily because they don't know about it. So I like to share information that comes up. And this is something that comes up for me with clients all the time. Now, there are some parents who know they have full knowledge that these tongues need to be clipped, yet they're okay not clipping them. That I don't understand, because these kids are traditionally in speech services, and they're not able to move their tongues in a normal manner. That's really important, because if your tongue is too tight, you're not going to be able to pronounce words effectively or at developmental level or within expectancy of age. So they're not checking tongues enough in these little kids. And I think boys in particular have this problem. So when you have the opportunity, and let's just say your little boy, your little toddler has speech concerns, and no one has mentioned to you anything about the tongue being tied, ask them. Ask them. And if they tell you no, it's okay, and you want to get it clipped anyway, please do that. My thing is, give kids a chance. Don't say, well, it's not that bad, it's just a tongue clip. It is. Because if your tongue was clipped, it was attached, you would want your tongue clipped, and you would want to be able to speak how you're supposed to speak. So give these kids a chance. Clip their tongues. All right. Let's talk about fathers in relation to raising a serial killer. This is actually part 3. Part 2 was all about teenagers, but I mentioned to you all that I would absolutely talk about fathers this week because I mixed up the blogs, but that's okay. We'll deal with teens next week. So when we're talking about aggressive behavior in children, you all already know that it can cause significant challenges with them, from social to emotional challenges to, problems with psychological development, lack of getting what they need in school. It just kind of interferes in their lifestyle in general. And so it is really hard for them to develop positive relationships if they're very aggressive. And so, what we don't want to do is be accusatory of fathers. And that was my point in the blog. We're not going to accuse fathers. What we're going to do is talk about their behavior in relationship, how they're into Sorry, my brain is fried. I have literally been talking for like 6 hours today. So you all have to forgive me. I'm human, right? The choices that they make can put their kids at risk for engaging in violent or criminal behavior later in life. So I'm just going to tell you all flat out. You all have to help raise your kids. I am going to say that. I can't tell you how many women I talk to every single day who tells me that, well, he left me. And I have, a kid with a behavior concern, or I have a kid with autism, didn't want to deal with this, so he left, right? Or he just found another family and forgot about us. That has a lot of impact on these kids. So I want to share with you how important you are in their lives. And although there's no clear evidence to suggest that fathers create serial killers, I want you to understand that a lot of kids that when the dads are in their lives, they absolutely do not become serial killers, but it's very complex, and there's a combination of environment and culture, and psychological factors. We talked about that with the mother. Abuse, neglect, that can cause these individuals to lack remorse. They become fascinated with violence, They have a history of mental health. And so the reason that fathers play a role in this is for several reasons. Now, modeling aggression is one. I have personally seen many, and I mean that, many kids who develop these more aggressive behaviors by imitating the aggressive and violent and physical and verbal abuse that they model from their parents. They're adopting, let's say the father, they're adopting that behavior. I'll give you an example. Go back out there and fight him. I hear that a lot. That's right. You don't let anyone do that. You go hit him. Or fighting, physical aggression, period. Watching their dads do this. You all have a direct impact based upon your behaviors for how your children grow to be adults. And so if you are modeling aggressive behaviors, there's a ton of research out there that'll tell you exactly what I'm telling you, that your kids are more prone to being aggressive if they are watching it at home. Who teaches kids how to control their emotions? Also, how to have emotions. Parents. In particular, what we're doing is talking about fathers. And boys typically, I know, gentlemen, these little babies these little boys tend to migrate toward their moms when they're very young. But I'm telling you, when they hit about 8 to 10 years old, it's daddy, 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 daddy. So if you're at the baseball game with your son and you are yelling, cursing, kicking, screaming, ready to fight some folks because your team lost, well, who's sitting there watching you? Your son. Calm that behavior down because it is having an impact on your kid. I do appreciate you being involved, but you can't model that kind of physical and verbal aggression to your child. Speaking of involvement, a lack of involvement, absentee fathers being gone. These kids tend to be pissed, especially if you were a father involved in your kids' life and then you just walked out of their lives. They are pissed off. Eventually, they think that rejection is normal. It can lead to feelings of rejection and low self-esteem in a child. Those two factors do contribute to aggressive behaviors. I don't know. One of the things my mom always told me was, you never ever leave your kids, ever. And I was just kind of like, and then she told me this when I was really, really young. I didn't even have kids, you know. She said, people come and go, but when you have kids, they're yours, and you never leave your kids. She used to tell me, you will break your kids if you leave them. And I think that there aren't enough people teaching that to our dads, because I'm encountering too many women raising kids by themselves. Lack of involvement. It does matter. If no one told you before that your presence didn't matter in your children's lives, it does. I'm telling you, absolutely. A harsh parenting style, harsh discipline, physical punishment. I'm not talking about spanking. Everybody can debate about whether or not spanking is acceptable. It's a personal choice. I always say you can't beat the crap out of your kids. We've called state on you beating the crap out of your kids. Spanking appropriately is a personal choice, but physical punishment, shouting, criticism, all of those harsh behaviors reinforce aggression. Harsh behaviors. I am not talking about swatting on the butt. I'm not talking about a little spanking on the butt when they do wrong. I am talking about some of the most cruel behaviors that you could do to a child. Being harsh, even verbally, it does lead to aggressive behavior. What if you can just do no wrong? even as adults, if we just kind of look back, on your childhood, and if you've ever felt like no matter what I do, I'll never win, right? Or in a relationship, every time you do something, your significant other is criticizing you. You bring flowers. Well, these aren't the right freaking flowers. Or you buy candy. I don't like this kind of chocolate. Or you decide to propose to a woman and she goes, well, I don't like the ring. I mean, that's how kids feel. They come in the house with the A and you say, where's the A plus? And then they get on punishment because they don't make an A plus. Just harsh punishment. Now, one of the biggest, I had to kind of chuckle for a minute because when I say that there is a lot of research about this next topic, I do mean that exposure to violence. Fathers who expose their children to violence, whether it's through media or real life, increase the likelihood of aggressive behavior in these children. In your kids, it is a fact. So, if you are showing, and I can tell you all about the Bandura studies, I'm a behaviorist. So, this has been researched time and time again for decades. So, if you expose your children to violence, even if they're watching those violent videos on YouTube, even if you guys are on the street in your neighborhood and you got your little kid's hand, those acts expose them to violence. So, fathers, if you do that to your kids, what you are doing is showing them how to be aggressive and they will mimic you. The other thing that I don't talk about on this blog is playing violent video games. Playing violent video games has also been researched many, many times, and they do cause not just aggressive behavior in children, but also the rest of us. When we watch those violent, I don't know, some of those games you all play. I can't even think of them. Warcraft, some real violent one. I don't even let, for example, my son play those kind of violent games because I know the outcome and the research in relation to those things. So those areas are how you can contribute. Also, they're influenced by your actual kids. You have to be in tune with their temperament. So if you have a child who is naturally aggressive, like sometimes I have 3-year-olds in my care, and man, they're just like slapping folks and hitting folks and stuff like that. And so that child's temperament, whether they have a disability or not, whether they have a mental health condition or not, their actual temperament is more aggressive. So you have to be aware of these contributing factors. And I want you to work hard to make sure you create a positive environment, a supportive environment, and then identify and address those aggressive behaviors, because what you don't want them to do is to be at risk for violent behaviors. I am actually going to share with you something that I've seen at least twice in the past maybe year and heard, and I might actually write a blog about this, killing animals. Now, I may have mentioned this on a podcast before, but this is not an acceptable behavior. So you can't support behaviors like that. You absolutely should not ignore them. This means that if it's done on purpose, this kid is okay with harming something. I've had a kid who was killing squirrels with a knife, not the hand, not with a BB gun. Both are bad. We don't want to do that with a knife. Then I had another one. Oh, I actually had 3. Then I had another one who was harming a dog. Then I had another one who was killing cats. And all three families were passive aggressive with dealing with this challenge. Okay. So that's as far as I can mention, but we don't want to be passive when these things occur either. We want to take action, especially with these little ones, fathers, because early intervention, it works. Okay. And so let's use these three kids as an example. Although there's no history of abuse or neglect in any of those families, what they are doing is still creating aggressive kids because they are ignoring the problem. Now, that is not supportive. A supportive environment would be getting some type of behavior therapy, making sure these kids understand that this is not acceptable and how you do it, which is a long story. Address the underlying factors that cause these kids to be more aggressive. The other thing is you can seek other mental health services and learn strategies yourself to deal with more aggressive behaviors. There are a lot of us out there who know how to do this. We've been trained for it. So we can absolutely help you, but you have to not make sure you don't ignore this kind of behavior. The other thing is early intervention is okay. Even if your kids are more aggressive, because sometimes being around other kids actually helps. And a lot of the teachers that are trained in early childhood know exactly what to do with these kind of behaviors that occur and emotions in these little kids. So if you have the opportunity to put them in early childhood centers, I would actually suggest you do that. The other thing is early intervention can address some of the history, some of the abuse and neglect. And those early childhood teachers, I mean, I've talked about this several times. They are really good with understanding other interventions that will assist you. They will work as a team with you. I haven't seen one early childhood program, and you all can chime in, but I haven't encountered one in my career where they weren't willing to help the parents to help structure these kids and to, try to help them decrease some of this behavior. So the other thing you can also do is to seek mental health services. So the ones that I recommend for this kind of aggression would be DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. I recommend ABA, applied behavior analysis. You see what's in there? Yep, behaviors. Cognitive behavioral therapy, in my opinion, probably won't work. You have to do I'm a behaviorist, so I'm always going to err on the side of behavior. Until you can get these kids to baseline and settle some of this aggression, they are not going to sit there and talk. They're not going to sit there and do strategies. Play therapy. These kind of kids will knock over the toys. They need more. So applied behavior analysis is always key for me. And then DBT for the older ones, the teenagers that are more aggressive. Dialectical behavior therapy. You all can look that up. And then once these things start getting better and settling down, then you can look into cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, play therapy, for the kids that are settling down, but they're a little bit older, 6, 7, 8, and trauma focused for those kids that are aggressive, possibly due to having a history of abuse or neglect. These things are going to help them develop coping strategies. And you all as well. Parents have to be involved. Dads, you got to be involved because you matter. So you have to be involved with these kind of therapy approaches because you can learn from parent education as well. So, I mean, there are things that I had to learn too. So sometimes we will transfer things that have happened to us onto our kids. So, for example, if you come from a family that was very strict on you as a child, you may actually be very loose with your kids, or uh, allowing them too much freedom. So that could be a problem for you kids. And so they're out wilding out without your supervision. The other thing is, if you grew up in a violent home and you have not resolved that behavior, those feelings, I always think that a lot of what we go through is rooted in trauma. Trauma is like an umbrella term for me. And trauma, if you think about an umbrella, trauma sits at the top, and then all the spokes are the symptoms of it. So if you were somebody physically abused, for example, well, you have fear in the spokes, you have nightmares in it, you have bad relationships, you might be abusing your own kids. There are a lot of factors that go up underneath that heading of trauma. And every time I used to, work in therapy and behavior management, when we would go back and look at the family system, for example, the working structure of my clients' families, sometimes it would be, wait a minute. So all of your life, you were raped. And that is why you don't develop relationships. And sometimes we need somebody else to help us put these things together to try to make it better and to try to resolve these issues that we have. But with our children, for example, if you are a father who grew up stoic and strong, and life taught you that you had to be this way, and you pass that on, and you pass down those traits of aggression, and you're very harsh on your kids. Sometimes I've seen dads that are extremely too harsh on their kids. And guess what? What have you developed in a grown man? A lot of people forget, because these kids are little and cute and cuddly, that they grow up. You guys are raising adults, not kids. So aggressive behavior has a lot of variations, a lot of causes. Genetics, psychological environment, and a father's behavior or absence can aid in the development of these aggressive behaviors. But not all children with these behaviors have fathers who contribute to it. So that's important too. So just because a kid may grow up to be more aggressive or a serial killer, sometimes their fathers and even their mothers are innocent. Sometimes they're innocent, because, no matter how we raise our kids, right, gentlemen, they grow up to be who they are. But we also have a responsibility as parents to kind of look within ourselves and go, what am I doing wrong here? I've had to do that plenty of times. So be a positive role model, decrease the exposure to violence, decrease the harm, the harsh discipline, promote healthy emotional development. Make sure you get your kids help, and possibly yourself if it's needed. Avoid everybody. Avoid making unsubstantiated claims about the role in fathers creating serial killers. Just focus on multifactorial causes of violent behavior. That's what we have to do. And our behavior as fathers, I'm talking like I'm a man now, can contribute. It absolutely can. I have only dealt with one, I think, family where the kid was so violent that I thought, oh my goodness. And the mom said to me a long time ago, years ago, do you think he's going to grow up to be a serial killer? And I'm not going to lie. The one thing I don't do is lie to the public. I almost told that woman yes. I did. I know that surprises some of you, I'm sure, but I almost did. He was killing animals, he was strangling animals, he was mean, he was aggressive. And then when we got down, and there were other behaviors, but when we got down to a lot of the challenges in the family, you know what stood out and what had to be worked on, and I had to get the father some help? It was his aggressive behavior and harsh discipline, and the fact that the mother was standing there and not doing anything. I mean, there was a whole host of stuff, like even more stuff than I'm able to talk about. Although this was probably 15, 18 years ago, a long time ago, there are some things that I will always remember. And I remember this family very clearly because I thought, why are you all not doing anything about this little guy killing animals? I mean, what the heck? He is pretty darn violent. So you see, when you traced it back in that umbrella, one of the catalysts was the father. So although mothers ask me this question, this is part of the reason that I decided to break it down with fathers and then the teenagers, because we all have a responsibility. Sometimes when things happen in the public that are awful, and I'll give you my personal example. It is the what was that one? It was a shooting. One of them triggered me. It's on my blog. One of the shootings triggered me. I'm actually going to look real quick on my blog because I want to share with you all which one triggered me. It was a mass shooting. Oh, it was in Nashville at the school. That's the one that triggered me. So I wrote a blog about that because they all get to me, but that one, for some reason, I don't know. You know how you'll have a trigger and it'll be something that'll really bother you? That is probably part of it, is probably because I lived in Nashville so long when I was younger. But something about that, so I immediately wrote a post in March of this year, a blog rather, about that particular shooting. If you want to read it, it's on the Kids Can See Ghosts part of my blog. I said to myself, where did we go wrong as a society? Sometimes when I see like trauma like that unfold, I'll go, where did we go wrong? Like I remember the Columbine kids. I was like, where did we go wrong as a society? What are we doing to shape these kind of behaviors? Because again, I look at everything from a behavioral perspective. And where do we go wrong? Everybody wants to blame mental health. It's not always mental health. That's not always the answer. Where do we go wrong? So is it with X or Z? So I'm always kind of, going back and forth searching for answers. So it's the same thing that I do when I get these aggressive kids. Where is the problem? The symptoms are the result of a problem. You can treat the symptoms to calm people down, but they're going to go back to the same symptoms if we don't figure out the catalyst. So if you are a dad, for example, and you are absent or teaching more aggressive behaviors, really listen to this podcast and reconsider. I actually met a little boy recently who was, I don't think he was 5 years old. Didn't even want to see his dad. You know why? Because his dad left him. Can you imagine what that little kid feels? For 5 years, he had his dad. Dad just walked out of his life. He's pissed. So he's throwing stuff. Mm-hmm. He is hitting other people. He is lashing out. He is trying to hurt people. And I said, this is how it starts, you know? This is how it starts. A little boy. And I said to him, I said, I'd be mad too. And you know what he did? He just looked at me. The cutest little thing, he just looked at me for a long time. I said, it's all right to be mad. I'd be mad too. Who does he think he is just walking out of your life? And he just looked at me for a long time. I said, you be mad. Let your feelings out. You go punch your pillow. You talk to your mother. Talk to your grandmother. You talk to your grandfather. Because I don't want to see you hurting other people because you're mad at the world. So his father left him. So that is why I wanted to write this, because fathers do matter. They do matter. They do contribute to positive and negative behaviors in children, just like mothers. And neither parent can be blamed in all cases for people becoming serial killers, but we do have a responsibility to address the aggressive behaviors that we do start or see within our children. So next week, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about part 2, which is, am I raising a serial killer? And we're going to talk about it from the perspective of teenagers. And the reason that I added teenagers, and I did not originally have teenagers, but there are teenagers who listen to me, and I always embrace children, but I also tell them the truth too. And I see these kids being violent in schools, attacking. I don't know how many videos I see where girls are attacking girls, boys are jumping boys. You know, what is leading them to be this aggressive? And some of these kids, I got to tell you all a story next week that just came to me from a long time ago. Some of these kids are actually the ones doing the mass shootings. What happened? Why? People want to know, why are they doing this? Why are they becoming serial killers? Why are these kids walking in schools shooting people? Well, we're going to talk about it because we need to talk to our kids more often. So I appreciate you all joining me as always. I'll be back in video next week after I have some rest and can wear some makeup to look better in my videos. So thank you so much for joining me. You guys have a good night.